Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. Thank you so much for joining us for our second session of the Essentials of Wealth Management. Today, we will be talking about financial planning. And today we have with us Melissa Miller, and she is from Fulcrum Wealth Advisors, and she's a financial advisor there. And so today she will be sharing a little bit about how to plan financially. And so just a few housekeeping things before I turn it over to Melissa here. So you'll see that we are in webinar mode this evening. And so what that means is that you will only be able to see us on screens unless you raise your hand and you're asking a question. And so if you do have a question, we will have Q&A sessions about halfway through and at the end of the presentation. And so feel free to utilize the chat box function or the Q&A function for your questions, and we will get to those during our Q&A sessions today. And also, today's session is being recorded and it will be available for later view on YouTube. But in the meantime, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa and we'll go ahead and get started.
Well, thank you so much, Kiana, and thank you for having me today, allowing me to do this. Very grateful for the Parkinson's Association of the Carolinas, and thank you to all of you who are joining in this evening. So like Kiana said, we will be discussing financial planning, and I'm not sure if you were able to catch the previous webinar, but it was on behavioral finance, which I thought was a great prerequisite to this one. So let's get started. So the outline will be similar to the previous webinar, but for those of you who are new, we will have 3 different sections. The first will be the introduction. We'll discuss what is financial planning, why is having a plan important, and then rules of thumb that some of you may know or some of you may not know. And then we'll really get into the areas of focus. We're going to dig deep as we build a house, which is a financial plan in my eyes, and we can go through that in a little bit, but we'll discuss the different parts of a financial plan. And then we will discuss saving, spending, and investing. And lastly, I will give you a few key takeaways just so you can know how to utilize this information that we go through today. So again, my name is Melissa Miller. I'm an advisor with Fulcrum Wealth Advisors, and I graduated from UNC Charlotte with a bachelor's of science degree in finance. I'm actually a first-generation college graduate, and I just really love giving back to UNC Charlotte. I do a lot of volunteer work there. So I am part of the Alumni Council for the Belk College of Business. And then I also am an associate for the Women in Business Initiative. So, I mean, they've been good to me, so I'm always going to be good to them and contribute. So I also have over 10 years of experience. It all started back in my junior year of college when I was first introduced to financial planning. So I did an internship through the Career Center, and it was with Lincoln Financial Advisors here in Charlotte. And I really loved it and knew that it was a career path that I wanted to obtain. So on a personal level, I really enjoy helping people. And most of all, I just want to have an impact. I'm a bit of an introvert, and I thrive on building relationships, building connections. So that's very useful meeting one-on-one with my clients. And love my husband. So we will be married 9 years in November. And we have a golden doodle named Moose. He is going to be 7 years old, but he acts like he's 6 months old. So he definitely keeps us busy. And last but not least, I love playing guitar. And oddly enough, that is what got me into the Parkinson's Association. And I'll explain a little bit more. So why PAC? The main reason is because of my uncle. So he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 2006. He lives in New Jersey. And, you know, I've seen him go through the different stages. He had the DBS surgery But it was last year when my husband and I went to New Jersey and visited him and my aunt. And we were playing guitar because that's the bond we have. We've always played guitar together. It's just what we have in common. As you can see, the left-hand picture, that was in my grandmother's basement. That was probably back in 2013, maybe. But you know, I'm playing rhythm, he's playing lead. We're just having a good time. And then the picture on the right-hand side is when we went to the Martin Guitar Factory up in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. So we've had some special times. But last year, 2022, we went up to visit him, and I just noticed more of a change. It was more difficult for him to really play guitar. So, you know, in his mind, he knew exactly what he needed to do, what he needed his hands to do, his fingers. He knew the theory behind everything. But when it came to actually playing, you know, he really struggled, and that hit hard on me. So when we got back to North Carolina, I decided to try to find an association here in Charlotte. That way I could support him, but also our community. I wanted to learn more about it. I know everybody experiences different symptoms and different stages. So that's how I discovered PAC, and the rest is history now. So before we go into the actual financial planning process, I wanted to share a couple planning quotes that I find really relevant. So the first is by Abraham Lincoln. The best way to predict the future is to create it. So what this is saying to me is basically we really have to create our own destiny. So if we want our future to be a certain way, we have to create it ourselves. And by doing that, that's how planning comes in. Financial planning comes in because it'll better prepare you for what you're going to encounter in your life, whether it be good or bad. And then the second quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, it takes as much energy to wish as it does to plan. And this one hit home to me because I've been known to be one that I love to dream and wish. And at the same time, I love to plan. So there's the reality part. But what this is saying to me is while wishing and dreaming is amazing, you should always keep that alive. But you really need to plan just so you can be prepared for the obstacles that may amount to your life. And that way you can live life the way you want to. So now we will get into what is financial planning. And the definition is it involves looking at a client's entire financial picture and advising them on how to achieve their short and long-term financial goals. So I like to think of it just very simplified. It's planning in the current environment for our future goals, our future wishes, you know, plans, anything like that. So that's how I think of it. And I loved this picture because it has the puzzle pieces, and that's how I think of financial planning. It's a whole puzzle. So it's a whole process. It's not just taking, you know, one puzzle piece out at a time, but it's more so putting the whole picture together. You have to look at your whole life in its entirety. So it's about putting the puzzle pieces together. And yes. So I get asked this question quite a bit. Why is having a plan important? And I really thought about it. And these are the three reasons that I came up with. And I wanted to share them with you. So the first is a roadmap. And I really think of a plan as a roadmap through our life. So if you think about it, we're gonna start driving and, you know, take different directions, take different highways. You could ask yourself, would I go through a toll? And I think of that as, okay, would I be willing to work with a financial planner, pay a fee, maybe take an easier, smoother ride, less traffic. And then also I would ask myself with the roadmap analogy, do I willing to speed? Am I willing to speed? And so that brings me back to behavioral finance when we talked about that last time, and comparing speeding to timing the market, trying to just get to where you want as fast as you can, and taking on a lot of risk, things like that. The next one is education. And this is something that I really, really thrive on. It's really important to me. I want my clients to know exactly, what their situation is, what they need to do. If it's, investment wise, why are they doing this? Like, everybody has to be on the same page. I want them to know as much as they can about it. So the easiest way for me to think about this is in April 2020, I broke my ankle. And since then, I've had 4 surgeries. So it's been quite the journey. But the first 3 surgeries, I wasn't really educated. I trusted the doctor that he knew what he was doing. He was using, medical jargon. He was using very large words, but I trusted him. I didn't really question much. And there was a lack of education there. And by the 4th surgery, I was like, okay, I really, really need to know the ins and outs of what's going on. And I think once you start to do that and you educate yourself and you have someone that's willing to help you learn, it makes you feel so much more comfortable. Last one, goals and objectives. I think that one is pretty self-explanatory. So, the goal is start planning early, and everybody's going to have different goals and objectives, whether it be travel, medical, or healthcare, grandkids. So no matter what age you are in your life, you always want to be setting goals and objectives so that you can achieve them. So now we get to the fun part, the common rules of thumb. And so, like I said, maybe you've heard of these, maybe not, but we're going to go through them briefly. So we've got the 4% withdrawal rate. Now, this applies to, this kind of has been an industry standard. So with your retirement accounts, when you retire, the rule of thumb is that it's safe to withdraw 4% out of your retirement accounts. And if you do that, then your money should last 30 years and not go to zero. Is that always the case? Absolutely not. We have very different variables involved in that. But the thought process behind that is the 4% is coming from dividends and interest. So then if you need to get 4% off of dividends and interest, so you're not really exhausting your principal, then you really have to be clever and smart with the investments you choose. The next one, rule of 72. I was actually talking to my dad, I guess it was the other month, and I brought up the rule of 72, and he's like, what? So I explained it to him, and he's like, okay, that's pretty cool. So what the rule of 72 is, it depicts a number of years if you receive a certain interest rate when your money will double. So an example of that would be, let's say we get an average of an 8% an annualized return. And we want to know how many years, hypothetically, it would take us to double our money. What we would do is we would divide that 8 by 72. So 72 divided by 8 equals 9. So roughly it would take 9 years to double your money. Again, these are all rules of thumb. It's not for sure. So you really have to plan around these accordingly. And I mean, of course, they are objectives, just don't take them extremely, extremely seriously. Last one, actually, this one is one that I recommend for everyone. definitely have an emergency fund. The emergency fund is going to be for if you have unexpected expenses. For example, if it's a hot, sunny day and your air conditioner goes out, that's where you would go to your emergency fund from. Also, maybe you have suffered an illness or complications. That's where you're going to turn to. So, a lot of times I like to say 3 to 6 months of your core living expenses. Uh, but a lot of times I myself am a bit more conservative and I would say 6 to 9 months, but everybody's going to be different depending on what they're comfortable with. So here is my house that I built. This is comprehensive financial planning. What does that mean? So as you can see, I built this house. When you think of a house, the most important part of a house is the foundation. So I consider my foundation cash flow. That's where it all starts. And then from there, we begin to build the different layers of the house. We go through different stages, and each one of those stages goes off the other one. So we then have asset protection, retirement, rate of return, estate planning, and then I like to think of the roof as other objectives. These will be different for everyone. I just gave a couple examples of tax or business planning. It could also be debt management, college planning, things like that. So before we actually get into the different parts of a financial plan, I wanted to share our timeline and what I do with my clients at Fulcrum. So we have at least 5 different stages. The first one is going to be an introductory meeting. This is purely just a meet and greet, no pressure. I just, want to learn more about you, what your goals are. It's a meeting all about you. And so it's a chance for you to speak, what you're looking for. And then from there, if we decide to move forward, we would go through a data gathering stage, which would consist of a lifestyle analysis, which I won't tell you just yet what that is. We'll go over it on the next slide, but a lifestyle analysis and then a client data request. That's going to basically ask for a lot of different things, anywhere from tax returns to insurance policies to 401ks, retirement accounts, anything like that. And then after that, we will have a data confirm meeting. So that's where we'll sit together and I will have looked at all of your data and I will go through each area of planning, just like the house. And you will actually validate, okay, Melissa, you are on track. This is incorrect. Not exactly what we were saying. It could be anywhere from specific things like date of birth, or this income's wrong, or you've got my social security wrong, things like that. All the way to, listen, we want to travel a little bit more. This number that you are accounting for, it's not really accurate. So we really get to know each other and make sure we're on the same page. Then from there, we would have our final plan meeting. And this is going to be where we really drill down on each area, each of the 5 areas of financial planning pertaining to your situation. And in my eyes, a financial plan, it should be living in a sense that it's gonna change. Like with our relationship, I shouldn't just give you a financial plan and you sit it on your coffee table and you're done with it, because everybody's life, we all go through different stages. And so it should change with us. Lastly, the implementation meeting. We would get together. I would make some recommendations, some suggestions. We would go over all of that. And then from there, we would implement. So that's just a brief overview of the steps that I take. Cash flow. So I told you we would talk about lifestyle analysis. It all begins with a lifestyle analysis in my eyes. That's how we determine cash flow. So what a lifestyle analysis is a spreadsheet. It has your core expenses, which are your utilities, your mortgage, your internet. And then it has your discretionary expenses, which are maybe your favorite outfit, eating out, things like that, going to the movies. And you really will record all of that into the spreadsheet. And we always make the joke, if you're married and you're doing this with your spouse, we always say, don't spend more than an hour on it, or you may want a divorce after that. Joking, of course. But anyway, it gives us a clear picture of your expenses. And then, of course, it involves short-term goals, long-term goals. Again, they're going to be different for everybody. And that's what makes it so fun to me. It could be anywhere, like I said before, healthcare, travel, weddings, pay for your grandchildren's college, things like that. And then lastly, a really important one is building a budget. And a lot of times when you hear the word budget, it's not really a positive thing. You don't really want to do that. So I like to think of it not so much as a budget, but a lifestyle. So I'll give you an example. If you are going on a diet and you cut out like your most favorite thing, say it's French fries, that would be mine. But once you get to your goal, then the next day you just eat as many French fries as you can find in the Charlotte area. And that kind of defeats the whole purpose. So don't think of it as a diet, think of it more as a lifestyle where you take incremental changes, small changes at a time, over time. Asset protection. With asset protection, the most important asset to protect is you. It's yourself. So we look at disability insurance, which is if you get hurt on the job, long-term care, which is extremely important, especially to caregivers or the spouse of a loved one. And then, if they need care in the future, you may already have a long-term care policy to protect you, if, with your illnesses. And then, of course, life insurance. And so I think that's pretty much self-explanatory. If you were to pass away, leaving, enough funds for your family to live. So a lot of time, life insurance agents will simply say asset protection is just insurance, but it's truly not. It's also protecting your assets. And we always say protecting your assets from predators, creditors, and outlaws. So our third webinar is actually going to be all on asset protection. We're going to do a deep dive into it. So that's why I didn't want to touch too much on it now, but give you a little preview. And so, Kiana, if you want to do the Q&A, I think now would be a good time.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and launch it. So we are going to kick off our Q&A session with a poll, and I'm going to go ahead and launch it for you guys. Okay, and so the question is, when it comes to financial planning, would you consider yourself more optimistic or pessimistic? Okay. Looks like we have maybe about 4 more people that need to vote. We have about 60%. Okay, so Melissa, it is 60% optimistic and 40% pessimistic.
Okay, I like that.
Thank you,
Would
Paula.
anybody, oh, I'm sorry, what was that?
I was just saying thank you all for participating. I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Oh, so would anybody be willing to share, why they chose their answer?
And if you'd like to share, just select the raise your hand feature, and that way I can promote you and allow you to talk. Or you can put it in the chat box if you'd like to share.
Anybody so far?
Yes. Okay.
Hi, Kathleen.
Hello. Um, Everything is just so much more expensive than I thought it would be as I first eased into retirement. And I think, like many people, I'm retired now for several years. And at the beginning, you thought you had money to give away and indulge grandkids with, and now it just isn't really like that. So I had put in pessimistic.
And I completely agree with you. And I think a lot of times maybe we're pessimistic about some views, but not others. But it is. I mean, we have to face it. It is very hard times right now with inflation being as high as it is. And you know, we do have to prepare ourselves for times like these. But I would say to counteract that pessimistic attitude, we can always think optimistically because typically things happen in cycles. And as long as you have a plan and can maneuver your way through these hard times, then I truly think that you'll be okay. I can definitely, actually, I think about, if you don't mind me giving an example, Kathleen.
Not at all.
My
That's
uncle,
fine.
okay, thank you. My uncle in New Jersey. So he inspired me to ask this question because he is so optimistic about everything. And like I said, he's really struggling right now. And so it's just eye-opening to me. I try to take a lot of tips from him because it is hard to be optimistic, whether it be financially with expenses rising the way they are, or just your personality in general. So um, I appreciate that, Kathleen. Do you have anything else to say about it?
Probably that in general, especially in relationship to Parkinson's and our family situation, that I have stayed positive, but that even the expenses related to Parkinson's are more than I thought they would be. And that when my husband was first diagnosed, I simply never thought of having a financial plan that included Parkinson's specifically. And I don't know how naive I was, but looking back, it would have been good to have had perhaps just a percentage of the income then to be set aside for just in case.
Yes, I understand your thoughts completely. And what's really important is, you know, we harp on start planning as early as you can. And if you can do that, then that is amazing. But the reality of the matter is, we don't know what the future is going to hold at all. So even when you're in the times like you're in now, you can still develop a plan for now and the future to navigate through it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and now we will open the floor up to anyone else who might have questions thus far in the presentation. Feel free to just raise your hand. It doesn't have to be relevant to the poll that we just did. It could just be any questions based off what's been discussed so far. Not seeing any raised hands. Oh, okay. Here. Annabelle. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I might have muted you on accident. There you go.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
Thank you for all the information you're giving. I guess my question is, after listening to the last participant, I am on the spectrum where my husband was diagnosed early. He's only 48. So I believe that we will be on the what is considered the building phase, right? As far as your assets or, your net worth. Um, what recommendations do you have for us, given that we now have this earlier diagnosis of how could we plan for the future? As the prior participant said, it's so much more expensive than what she thought, and I have no idea what that's going to be. Like, what should I do to figure it out what that's going to be and how to plan for it?
It's a very good question. I'm sure a lot of you are thinking that question, but really, it depends. And I hate to say that, but it depends on your specific situation. I know you said your husband was an early diagnosis at age 48. So for me to give a proper answer of, what specifically you could do in the future or whatnot, I would really like to talk to you offline, but just really get to know your situation better, because there's so many different variables. If you take the market out of it, the economy, the inflation, we still have to do a deep dive into your family and your expenses. And it's really just about setting a good foundation now for the future, because we can't determine how expensive things will be related to Parkinson's disease. We just know that it is going to be hard, but we can definitely set up a good system to prepare us for that. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, not seeing any other hands raised, so Melissa, I'm going to turn it back over to you if you want to go ahead and resume with your presentation.
Awesome. And I just want to say those were some really great answers. So thank you. So now we're going to get to retirement planning. And this covers a lot, but I will not bore you with a lot of things this evening, but we will go over some of the main thoughts that I have regarding retirement planning and, some ways to do it. So retirement planning is determining retirement income goals and what's needed to achieve those goals. So I will say, in my personal opinion, I do not believe that achieving the highest rate of return that we possibly can is the most important thing when it comes to retirement planning. I truly believe, just like the definition says, it is based upon your income needs, which what we were just talking about in the questions, future income needs, or our expenses. So we have to first start with that, and then we start to build around it. And that's where the whole puzzle comes into play, fitting the pieces together, everything like that. And don't get me wrong, rate of return is very important, and we're actually going to go over it next, but I don't think it's everything. So that's just my personal opinion. So what does retirement planning mean to you? I'm smiling and laughing a little bit because this is a really fun video, and I found some things in it comical. It's actually asking kids what they think retirement means, and a lot of their answers are very unique. So I am going to play this. Can you guys see this and hear this at this point?
Can't see it. I'm not entirely sure if it has anything to do with your screen share.
Gotcha.
You might,
No worries. That. And I will stop sharing this. Hopefully this will work. Can you now see the video?
Yes, I can see it now.
Excellent. Okay, so I will put the subtitles on and I'm gonna go ahead and play it now.
What does retirement mean? Retirement is where you reach a certain age where it's more difficult for you to work. I think it's like when you're in work and you're a long time and you feel like you want to get it. That's what it is. You get free money from your past work experience and you just get to do whatever you want. Yeah, it seems fun because you get to go on vacation a lot and you can go places like France and maybe Paris. Like whereas kind of do chores around the house or like take a vacation to get as far away as you want from the kids. All the people that you maybe went to work and said, looks like I gotta deal with them again. Retirement is when you think, I've done my part and you say to your job manager, goodbye, so long. Try to find someone else that's better than me. I think it is that you're so exhausted. You really, really exhausted and you're just really tired. When I retire, I'm going to be 26. You just quit your job and you go home, sleep in your PJs, and probably never get out of your PJs. Whenever you say, I'm too old for this, and then you sit at home and yell at the computer screen. Retirement is when you just don't understand why they don't make the buttons on the remote bigger. You don't understand why all these young whippersnappers drive so fast, and your back hurts every time you bend over to feed your dog, and you started getting interested in getting more and more cats, and you said, dang, I'm really sick of all these people at work, and you just want to go travel the world and be by yourself and buy all these clothes for your grandchildren and, just have more fun with your life. You don't have to worry about all the ignorance that you used to work with, and you can just go travel the world. You, get some rest and go home. Like if you want to do what you want to do and you don't want to do work and you want to go somewhere, it's really fun and that's what I really like. Mostly, you just lay in bed all day and watch the rest of your life. It's when you get too old for your job and you go to a retirement home. Probably over the age of 60. Maybe even 50. I've never actually seen a retirement home. You're starting a new life again. Like you're not a pickle anymore. You're a cucumber. I have no idea. The pickle is kind of sour, and when you become a cucumber, you're ready for new experiences. Sometimes you can't do certain stuff because you like some old people don't know how to do handstands because they're so old. They might break a hip or something. You could come and play video games. You could go to the beach. You could skydive. You could do extreme sports. Well, one thing that I would do, I would just keep looking for dragon eggs and eat tacos. I would just eat tacos. Hey, we did the same thing. You just have to focus on yourself, but also you have to keep in your right mind and don't go all wild just because you are retiring.
Righty, so let me go back to the PowerPoint. So it's a little lighthearted. I just wanted to, lighten the situation. We're talking about a lot of very deep subjects, but the last girl said that it doesn't mean just because you're retired doesn't mean you can go wild, basically, is what she was insinuating. And she's smart for her age. It's true. If you are prepared for retirement, it doesn't mean that you should go spend all of your money to where you'll be in a position later where it possibly affects your overall plan. So let's see here. Things to consider for retirement planning. This is actually a slide that I created based upon just my experience throughout the years. So of course, the first thing is going to be our income needs. That's going to be huge to pay for our expenses and, healthcare, things like that. The next one is equity versus fixed income versus cash. So basically that's just saying stocks versus bonds versus cash. And so, you do have to have a portfolio that is allocated correctly for your situation. You need to have a mix of all of those. And then retirement accounts versus non-retirement accounts. So retirement accounts being 401ks, IRAs, pensions, non-retirement accounts meaning tax accounts. And it's very important that you have a mix of both, especially if you are younger than 59 and a half. With the retirement accounts, you can't touch them without getting penalized if you're younger than 59 and a half. So it's a good idea to have a mixture of both. Active versus passive management. Active management, and let me first say there's pros and cons to both of these, but active management is more so when you have a money manager looking over your investments constantly. They're developing trends and things like that. Now, passive management is where you kind of just set it and forget it. So it could be maybe a target date fund, something like that, where nobody's really looking at it or rebalancing it, but maybe once a year. And depending on everyone's situation, active management might be better for one, passive management might be better for another. So it really just depends on your individual situation, which, as you can see, I keep emphasizing that everybody has a different journey. Last one, alternative investments. This is something I've really studied over the past 5 to 10 years. And these are investments that are non-correlated with the market. So examples would be REITs, which stands for Real Estate Investment Trust, BDCs, which is a business development company, and private equity. And I know there is a lot of people may be skeptical of things like these because they consider them extremely risky, but they have come a long way. Again, it all goes back to that education piece. If you can understand what these alternative investments are doing, if you can follow their cycles, then you'll feel a lot more comfortable about them. And they're a great play for income. And then also, like I said, it's come a long way, meaning that investors can actually get into institutional share classes rather than just retail share classes, which that's a whole different avenue. We'll keep it brief, but these are just things to consider with retirement planning and your portfolio. Rate of return. This is what everybody always wants to talk about, and that's okay. So it is the net gain or loss of an investment over a specified time period expressed as a percentage of the investment's initial cost. So that's kind of a mouthful, but when I meet with prospects or even clients, they're very concerned about rate of return, and believe me, I am too. I worry, so I'm constantly watching accounts and whatnot in the market, which is my job. But like I said before, rate of return isn't necessarily everything. Is it important? Absolutely. A way that I want you to think of it is a car. So think of the rate of return as the car engine. Is it important? Absolutely. It makes the car run. However, is it the only part of the car? It's not. So we still have the brakes, we have the cooling system that cools the engine, we have the air conditioner, everything like that comes together as one to create an experience for us with our car. That's how I like to think of it. That rate of return is important, but again, it's not the only piece of the puzzle. What goes into the rate of return? I think a lot of times this isn't really talked about, but it's extremely important. You have a lot of different things that go into the the rate of return. You can have things that affect it in a negative way. So we've got fees, commissions. If you're invested in ETFs, there's always going to be expense ratios behind those that you're not really seeing, but they are taking away from the rate of return. You also have things that make a rate of return higher. You've got interest, you've got dividends. So it's really understanding what goes in to your rate of return. I will say that it can be tricky the way it's reported sometimes. So you really have to be careful. I'm going to give you an example. A lot of our industry goes with an average rate of return. So for example, you start with a $1,000 investment. And then over the course of the year, your investment, and of course, I'm going extreme here, but it's to make a point. But you have 100% rate of return. So your $1,000 now turns into $2,000. The next year, you lose 50%. So you're now back down to $1,000. Now, if we're looking at the average rate of return and that actual calculation, it would be 100 minus 50, which is 50. And then we would do an average, we would divide that by 2, which will be 25%. Now, you can report that it's a 25% rate of return because it is, I mean, that's the average rate of return, but in reality, that is not the case at all. You are flat. So you started with 1,000 and you ended with 1,000. So keep in mind things like that. There's a lot that goes into rate of return, and you really just need to make sure you're getting that explained to you. Estate planning. This is actually going to be our 4th webinar. We have our attorney in our PAC group. So she's going to be telling you all about estate planning. As an attorney, she's going to be your expert on that, but I will go into it a little tiny bit. But basically it is making sure that an individual's assets are preserved, managed, and distributed after death, or the management of the property's financial obligations if they become incapacitated. So it's really making sure you're honoring wishes while they are alive, but also it's a way for them to control assets beyond the grave. Estate planning basics, wills. You've got living wills, which could consist of do not resuscitate order. You've got a last will and testament, which is going to be more targeted, obviously, to when you actually pass. Power of attorney. You'll have a durable power of attorney. That is going to be someone you elect to make decisions on your behalf when it comes to legal matters, business matters, things like that. And then you can also have a healthcare power of attorney. And this is going to be a trusted individual who can make healthcare decisions on your behalf. Also, trust. Trust tend to be a little bit more expensive, a little bit more difficult of a process to draft. Now, usually I see trust used in more complicated cases. They definitely go into effect the day that they're drafted, the day they're signed. You don't, like, a will goes into effect, the last will and testament goes into effect after you've passed away, but the trust is effective immediately. And then it does avoid probate. So next one, beneficiary designations. This is so important that on all of your accounts, you designate beneficiaries. So you can have your primary beneficiary, you can have your contingent beneficiaries, and a lot of times beneficiary designations will trump wills, and they allow you not to have to go through probate as well. Now, you may see on your forms, you may see the phrase per stirpes. And that simply means if one of the beneficiaries were to pass away, their share would then go to their children. So again, there's a lot of different, this is a very deep, lengthy conversation, but I just wanted to skim the top of the layer for you. Next, we have the cost basis. So I actually just dealt with this recently. A client of mine, their father, unfortunately passed away, and he had bought Ford stock, I mean, very early on. And so it had definitely grown in value. So there were a lot of, if he were to sell that, there would have been a lot of capital gains taxes. So what you have to remember is, as an executor of the estate, you have the ability to speak with a CPA and have them do a step up in basis, which basically means that that cost basis will no longer date back to, maybe the 80s when it was first purchased. It will go by the value of the date of death now. So as you can see, that would close the gap of capital gains a lot and be an advantage. Lastly, donor advised funds. This is for donors who want to make charitable donations, and it's really a tax play as well. So what you can do is, for example, if you plan to give $10,000 a year to a charity of your choice for, let's just say, 5 years, that would be $50,000. What you can do is put that $50,000 at the beginning all at once into the donor advised fund, and then you can have that tax deduction within that year. So it's not a dollar for dollar tax deduction, but a lot of times it's about 30% of your adjusted gross income. And the nice thing about it is you can carry over that tax deduction to the next year if you need to. And then the next year, for the 5-year period. Also, another thing I will point out about donor advised funds, you get to appoint a financial advisor to control those investments, but it allows you to be a part of the investment process as well. So you kind of keep some of that control. Other objectives, tax planning, business planning, capital gains goes into tax planning and offsetting gains with losses. So that would be considered tax loss harvesting. We've got lowering taxes through deductions. So all of these are just going to be on a case-by-case instance. Business planning, if you have a business, that's going to entail the structure of it. So if it's an LLC, but you want to have it taxed as an S corp, what are the advantages of that? Should you do that? Just talking through that kind of thing. And then retirement plans, which would be the best way to help your employees and also help your business. So last one, cost segmentation. This isn't really talked about a lot, but in a nutshell, it is accelerating the depreciation of your business property for tax purposes. Saving, spending, and investing. So what if I'm off track? I've always heard people say, well, you have to work longer, you have to save more, you have to spend less, or you have to take on more risk. And it's all about finding that balance, sitting down with somebody and actually going through your different scenarios. So what we have is a Monte Carlo simulation. And basically what that is you can do anywhere from 250 different situations all the way to 1,000 different situations. It takes your information and it just depicts like, okay, if the market were down, if the market were up, how would that affect your portfolio? And then it spits out a probability of success. Now, it's a good indicator, but of course, I mean, we can't trust that because everybody's situation is different and we don't know what the future holds. but it is a good idea to sit down and at least explore those different scenarios. Now, what if you are on track? Then what? Stick to your plan. Don't try to get ahead. Don't think to yourself, okay, I'm on track, so I, can take this lavish vacation that I hadn't planned on. Just keep a level head and keep doing what you're doing. Key takeaways. So, words of wisdom that I'm going to give you, and then another piece of advice: ask questions. So we will start with the words of wisdom. Definitely just get your financial house in order. Try to get organized. I think that's the most important thing where you can even start is just get organized, and let other people know where you are storing stuff or where you're keeping stuff. Let them in on it too, in case they need to know. And then don't confuse risk tolerance with your capacity for risk. So this is very interesting because our risk tolerance is basically our appetite for risk, how much we're willing to take on risk. But the capacity for risk is simply a dollar amount or a figure of how much in reality you can take on risk without it being too much or too little, based upon your needs and objectives. Consider your plans for gifting and passing on wealth, and then get an objective view of the subjective. So, really just get a second opinion, talk to somebody else to get a different viewpoint. Lastly, what questions should you ask? I would definitely ask, if you're going to sit down with an advisor, how can you help me achieve my goals? You really, really want to know the advisor's thought process and what they believe in. And then you have to determine if that's going to align with your needs and goals. Are you a fiduciary? This is very important, and it simply means, is my advisor going to put my needs before their wants? So just having your best interest at heart always. And then how will our relationship work? It's a big one, because I really do believe you have to have a relationship with your financial advisor. It's very delicate information that we're talking about. So you have to feel comfortable. So just ask them about the relationship. How often will you have meetings? What the steps are, things like that. But that is it. Again, thank you all for attending. And I know, like Kiana said, this is going to be posted on YouTube. So my information will be on there as well. And feel free to always reach out to me with any questions. And Kiana, if anybody has any questions now, then we can open it up.
Yeah, so thank you, Melissa. We actually have a question in the chat box. So someone said, broadly speaking, what is the most common blind spot you see clients have relating to financial planning?
A blind spot meaning that they didn't really even think about, or
They didn't specify, they just said the most common blind spot.
Yeah. So I would say it is, honestly, and it's what we're talking about today, is an illness or a diagnosis, things like that, not really planning on that. And a lot of times it's a blind spot that we don't even think about until it's too late. And what I mean by that is, once you're diagnosed with, just let's say, Parkinson's disease, it is harder to get coverage, life insurance coverage, or long-term care. So I would consider that a blind spot where, you're not really thinking about it. It's kind of over here, but you really should be thinking about it early on. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. Do we have any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand, and I will allow you to unmute yourself. No need to type it in the chat box. see. Not seeing any other raised hands or questions coming in. Okay. Well, if we don't have any other questions, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up for the evening. Melissa, thank you so much for the presentation. Hopefully everyone was able to get something out of it. As a reminder, this will be posted on YouTube, hopefully by tomorrow. If you all have any questions in the meantime for Melissa, if you didn't get her contact information, feel free to reach out to me directly and I can connect the two of you. But if nothing else, thank you all for joining us. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you all, and thank you, Kiana.
Thank you.